Hi, it's Harry Redknapp here. You're listening to a proper podcast. That's a podcast with proper football, proper talk.
Well, hello again. Welcome to the Alan Hudson podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We're joined today by a very famous actor, TV presenter, and a real football lover, a season ticket holder at Stoke City for nearly 50 years, he was telling me a minute ago. And it's Nick Hancock. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks very much. Delighted to be here and to see you both and to hear you both. Always happy to talk about football. Slightly more depressed these days than I've been before, but yeah, let's go for it.
Brilliant. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the podcast, Alan's got a message about subscriptions.
Oh.
Yeah, we got. I've been told by Tony that I have to do this. If you're not subscribed, just go into YouTube and subscribe, and so you'll keep the show on the road. Thank you very much. Is that allowed, Tony?
That's fine. And if anyone's got any comments, good, bad, negative, indifferent, whatever, we'll take them all. We'll take them all on board. We got broad shoulders. We love to get feedback from you guys out there. So please keep it coming. So on to Nick.
Well, no. Let me start. If you're wondering why Nick Hancock, the great Nick Hancock, is on today, is because of I had the pleasure of meeting Nick in my days, in my heady days and my lower days at Stokes. You know, when he was a 45-year season ticket holder of Stoke City, so he's seen it all at Stoke City, like probably Chelsea have been in the 80s, I suppose. But we become very, very good friends, and it's a pleasure to have him on again. He looks well, I must say. You look well, Nick.
That's very kind of you. Well, you can't see my bottom half. I've actually just got my warmies on down here, so I'm doing the old newsreader thing and not being fully dressed.
Like me at the game last night, I was like that.
Yeah.
Freezing, mate. Freezing.
Yeah.
But
the thing about watching for a long time, like you just alluded to, Alan, is I think more and more people don't accept this, and it's going to change less and less as well. Which is that teams can't even conceive now of ever getting relegated. Whereas in the 70s, from the 50s to the 80s, really, Chelsea, Spurs, they all went. United, they all went down. It was only Arsenal that stayed up by the skin of their teeth. But that was a normal part of supporting a football club, was regeneration. That you accepted there would be bad patches. And I'm not talking about losing 3 games. I'm talking about having just a terrible season. And often, forget Man City, another one, of course. And often that was just part of the shape of things, and it made you enjoy the good times even more. But you knew that it was possible to come back from it.
Well, I can make it right, and I think life's a cycle, isn't it? It's a cycle, although Ferguson had it for a long, long time, Fergie ran the roost. But I think really, the interesting thing about football today is the Manchester City saga. And we've been saying it in my family, me and my sons, mainly my eldest son. He's kind of ruined our game with all this back passing and, bringing goalkeepers into play. It happened the other night again. It happened the game I see on one of the games on Sunday. The goalkeeper gave 2 away. At Arsenal, wasn't it? Arsenal and Manchester City just give the first goal away, and then the second one, not only did they give it away, they done it again.
Well, it'll change again, because it always does. It's like, some things stick around for longer, but some things, they come and they're fashion for the season. I remember at Chelsea when you started playing with Victor Moses as a fullback, and you had your 2 fullbacks, and they were really bombing on all the time. And then everybody wanted to do that. Before that, Alf Ramsey, no wingers. Then Gordon Hill and Steve Copper come in, and everybody just started to go, where are we going to find wingers from? And then so things do change. It's just, I think I think people just look at success and try and replicate it. And so unfortunately think, oh, that's the way to do it. It's the only way to do it. You know, they do it in the Championship. And quite honestly, the players just aren't good enough to do it. You know, it's like playing those little you know, those little square bits where you're trying to keep the ball, there's one in the middle, and then you're passing it around dead tight. Well, you know, that is quite difficult. But when you add to that the pressure of it being a game, and if you give the ball away, you're likely to concede a goal. You know, some players, I'm really sorry to say it, that I don't think they have the wherewithal or the ability to do it. And even then, it only takes a slightly mishit pass. Actually, you're receiving it in the wrong place. Suddenly you're in twice the wrong place you were before. You know, thank God for them that they don't have the pitches that you used to play on, because you couldn't do it then. There's no way you could do it then.
Well, it's like, you know, I bring Chelsea and Stoke City. The two great examples of my career was Chelsea and, you know, Stoke. We played great football. But you wouldn't think about passing it back to Peter Shilton. You wouldn't think about passing it back to Dennis Smith. You know, you kind of get it off the back four, or you get it off the goalkeeper, and you look forward and must go forward, because nowadays the defenders have the ball more than the forwards, and you know, that's why we're in a mess.
Yeah, and do you think it's just a question for you very quickly, Alan? Sorry, I'm so engaged. That's why I'm jumping in. Go on. Is the other thing I find about that is you get an awful lot of passes that mean nothing at all across the back. And I wonder if sometimes that comes from the stats. You know, people want to say, I have completed 99% of my passes. Well, yeah, it's a piece of, as if you're competing, if your pass is 2 yards to somebody who's in a slightly worse position than you, it shouldn't just be about quantity, it should be about quality as well. Because sometimes the pass that you don't complete, and you've only just failed to complete it, is a pass that puts somebody clean through on goal. So is it worse to try that pass than to just knock it to the person next to you? Oh, that seems balmy to me.
Well, I think exactly what you're saying is a perfect example of Manchester City playing Arsenal at the weekend. You know, they just passed. They had the ball for about 10 minutes without Arsenal touching it and got nowhere. They were back where they started. Then all of a sudden they got their equaliser by slinging one in, and Haaland scored with a header. Yeah. If they don't know how to mix it, they don't mix it up.
No, that's right. And Forest, of course, scored 7 with 37% of the possession at the weekend. You know, it's what you do with it. It isn't how long you've got it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Al, just make sure you stay on screen. We're losing a bit of you from time to time. We want to see those gorgeous features of yours.
I can't see. Well, you never know, do you? We must touch on. I read in the week that it was 31 years since we lost Tony Waddington.
Oh, yeah.
And they were the heady days. They were the heady days I mentioned earlier on. And, you know, Tony, while we're on this subject, Tony wouldn't allow that. Tony wouldn't allow his defenders to have the ball and, you know, get it into Greenough. You know, it was all about get it into Greenough. That's why he brought Salmons, you know. And you watched Chelsea last night, and they were like that. They were just passing it around at the back and centre halves and fullbacks. And, you know, they booed their own centre half at one stage because he got the ball about 30 yards out, 35 yards out, and he turned around and he passed it back again. Got the ball back and he passed it back to the goalkeeper, and they were 35 yards from West Ham's goal.
Yeah.
And the crowd booed, you know, and they don't want to see that, the crowd.
No, they don't. I say recently, especially, I can only really refer to the Championship for the last 6 or 7 years because we've been out of the Premiership for quite a long time. But it seems to me, I'll go to games and it feels like everybody on the pitch, and I include the referee in this and the assistant referee, everybody in the pitch, their favourite part of the game is when the game is stopped. You know, the moment it's a free kick, thank God for that. We'll run and have a glass of water, or not a glass, obviously, a swig of water. Nobody can make a mistake while the game is out of play. And so that's a great relief for them. And it's the second best way to not have any pressure at all is to just pass it around at the back, because you're not involved in any risk, are you? There's no jeopardy going on, and I sometimes think that that's part of it, which would be fine if you played in waves, piss about with it for a little bit, but then go gung-ho for a little bit, but it tends to be that the default position is just to keep the ball in a safe place.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying. And I mean, we on the show here, we've had the likes of Matt Letizia on, and what's the point of having Matt Letizia in your team if you keep passing it back?
Yeah.
You got to get it into these players, front. I mean, Ozzy, when the early days at Chelsea with Ozzy and Hutch up front, you knew straight away that when you got it, my job was to get the ball back and get it into them too. If I couldn't get out to Charlie or whatever, but there was never any, since playing in the streets, in your mind, there was never a thought about playing it backwards.
No,
never. What's the point? And your defenders, they might be technically better today because they've been brought up in a different way. But defenders in our day, they defended and we attacked. Two different departments. Get it into us and forget it. Dennis Smith, for instance, you wouldn't go into a game at Stoke City without Dennis because you knew you're going to come under pressure. You're going to come under attack by the other team, and he was your man.
Yeah,
but when you got the ball, forget Dennis. He didn't want the ball. He wouldn't know how to play a 1-2.
No, unless he was shoved up for the last 2 minutes as an emergency centre forward, which they used to do.
Well, then you sling it into him. Yeah. You sling it into him because he'll go for it. I mean, probably possibly in the history of the game, the two, you can either call them brave or stupid. Dennis and Ian Hutchinson, one a centre half and one a centre forward, were the two bravest, most stupid people I've ever I've been on the field with, because law of averages says you can't keep putting your head there in it without getting it kicked off. Hutch was plagued by injury when he was after a season and a half because he was a Southern League player and he would go where you wouldn't go. I cringe when I used to go, don't go for that, Hutch, and he'd go for it. Dennis was the same. Yeah. And I remember thought about Dennis Smith and the centre halves. We played at Middlesbrough one day in a league game, and we were getting hammered. It was Essen Park and it was swirling and all that. The ball was in the air. Anyway, we come in at half time. Dennis got a great big gash in his head. He's on that little table in the middle, and the doctor's looking at him, stitching him up. And as I walked out, I patted him on the leg. I said, "Take it easy, mate. Take it easy. Have a rest." He says, "I'm going out there." I said, "What do you mean you're going out?" I said, you got stitched up head and you're going to do it again." He went, "I'm going out there." And in them days, you didn't have 7 subs,
No, exactly. Yeah.
And he came out, he played the second half. And you thought, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go out there and do that, because we were 3-0 down and you were going to get nothing out of the game. And Tony should have said to him, then give it a break,
Well, but Alan, you were prettier than him. You had more to lose.
Nick, can we just go back?
He didn't think so. Go on, Tony.
I just want to go back to those, because obviously that would have been the start of Nick's love affair with Stoke City, the late 60s, early 70s, I should imagine. And can you go back to 74, Nick, when Alan joined Stoke? I mean, can you remember how you felt when he joined the club?
Well, it was an exciting signing, but I had no idea, real idea. I was 11 years of age, how that was going to change the way we played, and it really did change the way we played. And we had some very good players, and we'd just done 2 cup semi-finals and won the League Cup. But there were a few. There needed to be some changes, eventually. And then Gordon Banks, of course, had his car crash. So there was all sorts of things going on. But I hadn't envisaged. We were a very effective side in the very first 2-3 years of the 70s. Very effective. Lots of blood and gut stuff going on. You've got Big John Ritchie. You've got Alan Bloor. These are people you you'd fancy to cause anybody some trouble, Mickey Bernard even. What I wasn't ready for was that just the change in, I'm not going to call it quality because it's a different sort of quality, just a change in the type of football we played. And it was much more on the ground, and it was much more careful and precise, and much more exciting in lots of ways. So I think that who could have known that was going to happen, but that did happen. And in fact, the funny thing is, when Alan came back in the 80s, he did the same thing actually for a season. He kept us up. Okay, we wasn't quite the football of 1974-75, but from where we were to where we finished, with a couple of journeyman strikers in Russell and Painter up front, but put the right ball in, and if they strike it cleanly, they've got a chance of scoring, and indeed they did. So 2 times, one player completely, and I'm not just saying that because he's here, but completely changed the feel of the club and the way we were going, and that's quite a rare thing. Of course, these, not that he was, I don't know, he might disagree with me, not that he was a take the game by the scruff of the neck sort of player, but he was an extremely efficient and skillful user of the ball, and had a great sense of spatial awareness, and had a great relationship with Jimmy Greenough. So sometimes that happens in football, I'm sure, and sometimes it's just chemistry, and suddenly something happens. You can have a team, like with Ferguson at United, who, although we shipped a few out, but who've been playing badly for a long time, and they get a couple of games where it starts to work, and then suddenly they're a completely different team. It's just something, it's magical to watch, but it's not something you could predict, unless you're Tony Waddington, I suppose.
Well, I think the thing I still can't work out, and now I wrote a couple of books, and Nick kindly done the foreword for me, and this is how close he was, and this is how much I admire what he does, and he's a very good writer, and he likes me, of course. But I remember you writing in one of your forewords that you was at a match one day, and Keith Humphreys said to you,
he said. We were top of the league at the time. We won 3-1 at Birmingham. We were top of the league, and he's shaking his head. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? We've just scored 1, and we scored a brilliant goal that day. Jimmy Greenough did. We won 3-1. Had Jimmy Robertson there, and and he's down in the mouth. I said, what's wrong with you? He said, well, I think we're in danger of becoming a one-player team, a one-man team. And in some ways, I could see that because everything went through Alan. That was the famous training ground story, wasn't it? Of you and a different coloured bib to everybody else.
Yeah, that was true.
Both teams had to play it to you.
Well, not the other team, but but that kind of made me a couple of enemies in the dressing room from day one.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
And they didn't like it, but it's funny how it's like Chelsea at the moment. Going back to Chelsea, They're missing exactly what I brought to Stoke. And I say to people now, they haven't got anyone to control the game. You can buy all these players for millions and millions and millions, And what Tony Waddington see when George Easton was a fantastic player. At Newcastle, at Arsenal, you had the last years of him, but he was still brilliant at Stoke. I've seen him playing this one semi-final against Arsenal, and Alan Ball was chasing him. He was brilliant. And Tony could see in 1972 when we played in the League Cup final, although I was on the losing side, I think he kind of followed my career quite closely to think that I was going to be the one to replace George.
Yeah.
The perfect replacement. And I think that is what we haven't got in management today. And I bring that as an example, not as something that happened which was great for me. Because when I come to Stoke, I thought, what am I going there? All I knew about Stoke City was the place nightclub. That's all I knew about. And when I got there, Nick, I walked out of Stoke Station on that Monday morning, one, like I'd been at a party all over the weekend, a going away party from Chelsea with my family, and looking forward to Stoke, but a little bit out of form, didn't know what was happening. And I see this. I walked into the North Staffs Hotel with Tony and Albert Henschel to the press conference where there was 8 people at the press conference. That's how big it was. And I see this great big yellow Mercedes outside, and I thought, he's got that for me. I thought it was a signing on fee. A brand new yellow Mercedes, big yellow Mercedes. I walked in, and who's in there but Jeff Hurst? I didn't know that Jeff Hurst played for Stoke. This is how out of touch I was with the division. I didn't know who played for Stoke, and I didn't realise Jimmy Greenough was as great a player as what he was until I played with him. Otherwise, that would have passed me by. If people would have said to me from Stoke, Greenough would have got in the Chelsea team, I'd have said, go away. But when you play with him and you've been out there with him and you go, wow. And that kind of brought the best out of me, brought the best out of him. But there's only one person that knew that. That wasn't me, and that weren't Jimmy. That was a manager.
Yeah.
And the manager, people say today they slag managers off and they say this, that, and the other, but they're the wrong managers to bring in. It's like,
well, apart from anything else, they don't sign the players anyway.
Well, in today's football, yeah, as you said about Fergie, I always said with Tony, Ferguson was the same. Ferguson was probably will go down as the best in the history books, the best manager of all time, because he won the most. But he built for like 4 or 5 different teams. He like, I always call it, and I think you've read a couple of my books, like football is like getting a jigsaw puzzle and putting all the right pieces in the right places, and he fit in there and he'll fit in there. And this is what Tony was brilliant at. He could see that, and he had long sight. As I say, he followed me for 2.5 years before he signed me, and I was thought, what's going on here? Yeah. But he couldn't see what Dave Sexton couldn't see.
Yeah.
Dave was a coach. Tony was a manager.
Yeah.
There's a big difference, and a brilliant one at that. Look at his past record of the players he bought.
Yeah.
From Stanley Matthews to the great Dennis Violet, people like that. Brilliant signings.
Gordon Banks, yeah.
But I mean, Gordon Banks, when all the goalies in the league, the Liverpool, Manchester United, Man City, all these big teams, he got the best player in the world for 40 grand or something. Ridiculous money. And he was just had this. He had this insight, but the only thing that went wrong is that when Osgood didn't sign, he had spare money, and the director's speak talked him into buying Peter Shilton. Which was a wrong move, I'm
a big fan of John Farmer as well, and actually, it's funny, isn't it, when we're just as we're recording this, the transfer window's just shut, and the times that players have been bought to cement a run for the title and derailed it, great players, but didn't do so. Rodney Marsh, I remember Man City bought Rodney Marsh to finish off that season. This is our year, we're going to win the league, and it didn't work for them because you're going to unbalance the dressing room for a start. You're doing well anyway, so it's difficult to change. I suppose there could be injury worries, whatever, but you see a lot of those buys. I mean, Steve Daly was another one, wasn't he? That Man City again, I think £400,000 from Wolves.
£1 million.
£1 million, yeah. But and then equally, you do get great signings that come, but there's always a risk. And like you say, Alan, if it isn't just buying someone because they've scored a lot of goals, but someone that's going to fit into the way you play, yeah. That's thinking ahead. That's why January was never that important. I mean, you could sign players throughout the season anyway. So, but quite often, what would happen is that after Christmas, when they say that traditional old rubbish about you don't look at the table until Christmas, but I think there is something in that you hit January and you can see the end.
I think Easter was the time that everything kind of, you looked at it realistically and think, oi, we got a chance here. Christmas, you don't do that. Christmas is a time to enjoy, you know, go and have a party, forget that. Easter was a time when they were all fighting for the top. Going back to before we go on to, I want to talk about Mark Stein in a minute.
Okay.
Before going back to Malcolm Allison, he bought Rodney Marsh. You know, our podcast can be a little bit controversial as well, Nick. He bought Rodney Marsh because he was. I was down here in London going in the Playboy Club when Malcolm Allison and Rodney Marsh were going in there together. So this wasn't a football. This weren't a football thing. Rodney Marsh was he was flamboyant at QPR. I see his first game at Fulham. I was a Fulham supporter at the time. He could do this, that, and the other. They called him the Clown Prince at QPR. Well, Stan Bowles come down and knocked that out of the water because Stan Bowles was head and shoulders above. He was, you know, because he'd done it at the top level as well, where Rodney done it in the lower leagues. And when he went to Man City, as you said, he upset the boat. He rocked the boat. And Man City had a good team, terrific team. But he done exactly what Waddington wouldn't do. He wouldn't buy a player like that who's going to rock the boat. You know, I was a troublemaker. I was a troublemaker at Chelsea, so they say. But he proved I wasn't.
Yeah.
He changed it around in a different way. He said to me one day, Alan, this was in the early days, after about 6 weeks there, you're doing everything right, but in the wrong order. You remember the Eric Morecambe thing?
Of course. Yeah,
on the piano. Well, that's what Tony said to me, and I went out with the lads, and I was saying, you know what he just said to me? I said, because I couldn't work it out. To this day, I can't work out what he was talking about. I knew that I loved my football. I wanted to be the best player every week. I love going out with the lads. I see the lads more than I see my wife. That finished that. That knocked that one out the wall. So I was trying to work out what order it meant. But what he was saying, don't change nothing. Don't you change. Just let your football do the talking. Mm-hmm. And this was what Tony Waddington was all about. That people said, he liked to drink too much. Well, he didn't. He could only think when he had a gin and tonic in his hand, you know. So what's wrong with that? You know, as long as on a Saturday afternoon, the likes of you who've supported him for 45 years are going, God, this is fantastic. I love this. Mm-hmm. You didn't bother about what we did from Monday to Friday. You know, you bothered what we did on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
That's why you pay your money. That's why,
that's what I always say about people are talking about financial fair play and blah, 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 and this getting paid that, and you're going to get fined, you're going to lose points. I'm going, hold on, what happened to just being able to go to a game of football on a Saturday? I don't want to know the ins and outs of the bloody accounts. You know, I could give all the passion on. I'll say Saturday at 3:00. Of course, Stoke kicked off at 3:15, but there you go. That's another story because of the shift patterns at the Michelin factory, which is the reason they kicked off at 3:15, and that's the reason I got married at 3:15 as well.
Well, it's strange you say. Sorry, Tom. It's strange you say that because last night before the game, I met a couple of people, very influential people. One at West Ham and one at Chelsea, and they're in the same job of getting the best for the supporters. They go in with the directors and talk about. Because Chelsea are trying to get rid of season tickets.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
And to up the price so they make more money. Now, the fella from West Ham was saying exactly the same what we're doing. He said, we're fighting against them. He said, we're doing well because fans are against it. There's going to be an uproar. There will be an uproar. Yeah. The one thing West Ham have over Chelsea is that Chelsea, if you go to their matches, like last night, it was like sitting, they used to call Arsenal the library, didn't they? Sitting in the library. Well, it was a little bit like that at the Bridge last night, and every other time I've been, the crowd just sit there and watch it. Like I think a lot of them is tourism. You know, they're not Chelsea supporters. And they do nothing but watch all these passes and don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I went in last night because I've got a really bad knee at the moment. I got in, I can't go out for the second half. It was, it was that bad,
Yeah.
Tony sits through it, as you got to sit through things when they're not going well at Stoke. But something will happen about the fans, and it'll be for the better because of these two fellas last night.
Yeah, but that's Tony. Sorry to jump in on you again. That's exactly what we talk about in our podcast, The Famous Sloping Pitch, because the reason it's called The Famous Sloping Pitch is that we're saying football isn't a level playing field, and that things are changing, and they're changing at such a rate. You know, FIFA are getting involved in a Club World Cup, and UEFA are changing the way that the Champions League works, and the World Cup is going here, there, and everywhere, and there's more games, and it's all just sell. Well, eventually, it's just going to get too thin on the ground. And I'll tell you what, if those clubs get rid of season tickets and they're looking for walk-up, not that it won't be walk-up, but people booking tickets, and suddenly the game isn't so attractive, they really will have made a rod for their own backs, because it's the season ticket holders that carry you through the times when it's bad, you know, when nobody really wants to go, when you know your team's in a poor run of form. That's when they'll suddenly realise they need the fans again. Although I agree with you, I mean, I've seen some of the prices that they do for these special, trips to Stamford Bridge, and it's $6,000 to sit by the bloody dugout, things like that. You know? And also, that's one of the worst views in the bloody game. I never know why managers go down inside. I've never known why they do that.
My season ticket's in the very front row, Nick.
Is it? Well, I mean, you get the atmosphere, you know, but when I was a kid, that would be where the kid with the least money would go.
He did
shoved up against the wall.
Nick, that sounds quite good what he's talking about. It ain't that good in the front row. It's more like in the underground. You know, very low.
You don't get a flavour of the overall.
But talking about how they sport the game, my son's just left Qatar. For this as an example, this is how they're ruining the game, and money. He's just had a job in Qatar. They had the World Cup in Qatar. My son was now manager there last year, well, a month ago, and there's still nobody in the stadiums.
No, I know. Yeah.
They took the World Cup to promote football in Qatar, and there's still nobody goes there. They took the money and they'll run. So now he's moved on. So that Qatar is finished. You know, so what was the point of that? Well, it's not even a footballing nation. No. Germany, Spain, Holland, you know, Brazil, Mexico, brilliant.
Yeah. No, that's all about publicising the nation itself. That's why Qatari Airways are on. You know, we're on Barcelona shirts, and Emirates is here, and blah blah blah. Yeah. They want to turn that into a destination that people want to go to because they think the oil might run out. I think that's what it was all about. So they got plenty of money to do that, as we've seen it. You know, I don't want to lump all those countries in together because they are individual countries. But the one thing they do have in common is that they have a lot of money and aren't afraid to spend it.
Yeah, I was just telling the story about you around Brendan's house before the big promotion entering the Premier League the night before, remember?
Yeah.
You know, that was really when we had our first social event, and you were nervous as hell, and you come round in your pajamas and your dressing gown.
I don't think I want to picture him in his pajamas.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it was all about this is the reality of it all, you know. And Brendan was a great fella. Brenda and Jan were a great couple, and we were there together laughing. And I was looking at Nick and I was thinking, do people really get this nervous about, you know? But it was a big game, wasn't it? You know, Leicester City at home the next day.
Yeah.
You know, Stoke went into the Premier League and Leicester went down at the Championship. And I remember that because I was in the foyer beforehand, and I bumped into Gordon Banks, and I said to Gordon, this must be a big day for you, you know, because Leicester cheated Gordon when he left, and Tony paid him all his money. There was the truth of the story, like he did with me. Chelsea wouldn't pay me, Tony paid me. And I said, it must be a big day, Gordon. You must want, I didn't say the words, you must want Stoke to go up, because he was president, go up and Leicester go down, and they did, and that's what happened. Stoke went into Premier League for the first time in his history, and Leicester with Ian Holloway, I think, may have been the manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they went down. And so everything worked out for Gordon on that day. That would have been the perfect situation for me, like going back to the bridge and get the winning goal and think, take that, kind of thing. And so, but Gordon was more of a gentleman. So, Tony, take it away. Let Tony get a word in it.
Yes, Tony.
I just want to widen the scope a bit. I mean, we've done football. I just want to touch.
We're not done with football. We got to do Mark Stein.
Yeah, okay. We will get back to football, but I just want to widen the scope a bit and talk a bit about your career, Nick. Especially some of the TV shows you've been on. I mean, everyone remembers. They think it's all over. I mean, give us a flavour of what it was like to be involved in that show.
Well, it was a very weird one because suddenly I'm in a room with Lineker and Gower, both of whom I admire in different ways. In that I love my cricket, and Gower was like a real hero to me, and I really admired Gary, who just retired, come back from Japan, And not only am I in a room with them, and they're not that much older than me, a little bit older than me, but I'm tasked with taking the mickey out of them, these two giants of English sport. And of course, I have to do it because we're also going to be taking the mickey out of the guests. And they were great because it was only by them being willing to have the mickey taken out of them that we could get other guests on. Because, other people have got to go, well, I'll tell you what, if Lineker's having it and Gower's having it, it's all right. It's a bit like, it always makes me laugh. It's a bit like when players get very upset sometimes justifiably, because some of the things said to players are absolutely awful, but they'll get upset about people disrespecting them, blah, blah, blah. And is he gone? He's gone. He's back.
He's back.
Players can get a bit thin-skinned, but the funny thing is, if you go into the dressing room, not that I've often been in the dressing room, there's tons and tons and tons of banter and mickey taking going on. It's Absolutely. Just so what you need is permission. Well, he's allowed to take the piss out of me because we train together every day. We shed blood for each other, blah blah blah. Well, Lineker and Gower doing was like that. You have permission. And from there on, it was all bets were off, and it was great fun to do and to meet, lots of people who I really, really admired in sport, and be nasty to them, which is basically what the show was. Well, not nasty, but, irreverent. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, it was great fun to do. And it was, I know I was just, I every time I did it, I was just thinking, I can't believe I'm here. This is fantastic.
Yeah. It's a little bit like your podcast. It's a great leveler.
A great leveler, exactly right, exactly right. Yeah. And of course, the thing about it was that BBC Sport hated it. They hated it so much because they thought players won't give us interviews anymore. You can't talk about, because sports journalists, God love them, generally are quite in awe of the sport that they're covering. Not always, but quite, and certainly very respectful, which you should be. But so the BBC Sport people hated that. I mean, they thought that, they would never get another interview again. You can't talk to Tessa Sanderson like that. You can't say such and such to, Tanny Gray Thompson. But I think what they'd underestimated the fact that especially the team players, that players from team sports, they're used to it. They get it all the time in the dressing room. The individual sports people, interestingly enough, are a different thing because they tend to be cosseted, and I mean, not all of them, of course, but they tend to have people telling them they're great all the time because that's what it's like. You go out on a tennis court, you need to be believing that stuff. You go out and play golf, it's only you that can make the errors, and so it's a different thing. They tend to be surrounded by people who are very supportive, put it that way, rather than people who might be your best mate but will still take the mickey out of you at the drop of a hat. So that was an interesting thing. Yeah.
That show was very much a trailblazer, wasn't it? Because I mean, there are so many shows of that ilk now, but I think it's all over. Probably started that trend of irreverent banter in sports shows.
In sports shows, yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, there was Have I Got News before that, but obviously that wasn't sport. It was just, for me. I always remember when I was younger, my mum saying to me, I'm talking about 17, 18, what are you going to do with life? Because I'll tell you this, you're not going to get a job talking about football and telling stupid jokes. And I thought, There you go. That's the job I got.
And Mum knows best.
Mum does know best, but in that particular case, she was wrong.
Do you remember a particular show or a particular incident and excuse me, a highlight?
Oh, we had Eubank on. We had him on a couple of times because he was irresistible, because he'd always give you something, and we got him to talk about Jonah Lomu. And he was just saying, no, these people, these rugby players, they don't know what fight game is. They don't know about this. They don't know about that. We don't know about the other. And then we blindfolded him and we brought Jonah Lomu on. And and it was quite fun. I mean, he wasn't intimidated, but the audience naturally loved it. So it's just little things. I enjoyed nearly all of them. I can't hardly think of a show that I didn't enjoy.
Did you keep in touch with any of those guys, Lord Gower or Mr. Lineker?
Gower I see quite a lot of, because I go to a lot of cricket, and he's generally there, because you go to cricket, it's usually international cricket. It's international cricket. Gower's like to be there. Gary I see occasionally. He came to the podcast. He's fantastically busy. I don't see him socially so much, but I'll give him a call every now and again, tell him if I think he's been talking rubbish on Match of the Day, because that's my job.
Yeah.
And
mention his ears.
Hey, no, they've all been pinned back now, those ears. You don't worry about that. And of the others, Tuffer's seen quite a bit of, because he was captain eventually. But no, not really. But then I'm living back in Stoke now, so it's not like I'll go to the same social events. Well, not unless they're coming down to Domino's night at the Wheat Sheaf. And I can't see Jonathan Ross doing that.
Was that a show that passed you by, Al?
No, it was. I think I was too busy enjoying myself, to tell the truth. I might have even been in Seattle a lot of time. All I know,
I think you were. I think you were in America.
Yeah, I'd seen it a couple of times, and to tell the truth, I wasn't really impressed with your man. Lineker's not my kind of man. He's
pardon me.
Yeah, that's mine. And I thought this fellow, I wouldn't become friend with him otherwise if I didn't. Respect and admire him, but move on.
Yeah,
I want to know. I want to, me in the 70s, and then I went to Stoke and I was at a nightclub, and Mark Stein come along. What was Mark Stein like in your eyes as forwards go?
Okay, he was in effect playing on his own up front, which in those days was quite rare. That what had happened is in the early 70s, it was always a pair, and often little and large would be the cliche, wouldn't it? Toshak and Keegan being the exemplar. So Stino started playing up kind of on his own, and we had a very tough back line and a very hard working midfield. But Stino was the icing on the cake. And what he had that I always loved was he could move at pace with the ball, which is rare. You used to get players who were good with the ball and players that were quick, and they weren't always the same thing. That's the trouble. I always used to say the trouble with quick players is they never learn to play the bloody game because they're so quick. And when they're playing at a low level, all that happens is the ball gets knocked over the top. So they're never really, that's a terrible cliche, but it's kind of true. Whereas we had a player called Nigel Gleghorn that was incredibly slow, but was therefore a wonderful footballer because he wouldn't be able to get away with it otherwise. So, he could always turn out of things and turn into things. And Gleggy would often set Stino up. But what Stino could do was, and I don't know whether you'd agree with this, Alan, he could move at pace to at a player. He wouldn't beat them in a messy style, but his body movement was incredible. And the defenders are going like that. And he just has to see that much of a space and he hits it and he's going at full pelt. But it's the body movement. It's not even a dummy. It's just a sway. And he was that's the thing I always remembered. Once he got the ball and he's on his way and he started swaying, you thought, here it comes. It's coming now.
Well, that's called natural ability, isn't it? That's called, and it's in the genes because his brother was an exceptional player.
Yeah,
Brian. But this kid, you know, I'll tell you why it took my eye so much is because Garth Crooks came through and out. You know, it all went wrong, but he went to Tottenham and had a great career at Tottenham.
Did.
But for me, Mark Stein was, if that had been Mark Stein going to Tottenham, he would have got a lot more goals than Garth.
Yeah,
He really impressed me. And then when I met him, he impressed me even more.
Yeah.
A great kid.
Well, he's had incredible life as well, coming from South Africa, you know, under pressure from apartheid, because I think his father had been an outspoken critic of the regime and things like that. So he's come to England as, you know, as a young kid, 2 or 3 of them. You know, that's quite a it's quite a difficult change. I think Cape Town to Luton's a bit of a change. I don't know whether they did live in
well,
Luton.
it's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, we're good friends with Cannonville down here. You know, Cannonville was the first player at Chelsea that took the brunt of the colour change.
I remember the big cup game against Sunderland. Or was it Sunderland or Sheffield Wednesday when they drew 4-4, didn't they? Or
and he came on and scored 2. He's a great lad, but to do that at Stoke, you know, to be a coloured kid at Stoke at that time and come through and be outstanding. And then he comes to Chelsea, and as we spoke the other day, when he hit equaled the record, 7 goals in 7.
He scored in 7 successive games, over Christmas and New Year one year.
And everyone went, oh, you know, what a player this lad is. Well, I'd see him at Stoke, and that is, you know, and I knew this kid could go anywhere and play. And I always say, Nick, you know, from the 70s team, there's 1 or 2 players in the since then I've watched that we really could have got into the 70s team.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to Chelsea, you look at the 70s team there and think how many of the Frank Lampard and John Terry team would have got in our team, or the other way round, because they were a superb team. They were better all round, more power. They'd have the likes of Arjen Robben and all that in the team, world class, you know. So it's interesting, but I say Mark Stein would have been brilliant up front with Greenhoff, you know. I look at the jigsaw puzzle again, you know, and it's and he came here and he made a mark at Chelsea without. They didn't have I don't think they had the good management of what we've been talking about earlier to make
the best use of him.
He's not talked of in pubs around here unless you bring his name up. They go, "Oh, that was a kid that done that," but he was a much better player than that. And you know, that's why I like to bring these players up and think, you know, how good they really were. You know, and you're watching mugs down here on 300 grand a week, and who think they're good players. You know, and that is why the football is in a bit of a mess at the moment.
As a non-Stoke City fan, maybe you could educate me on this, but is Mark Stein looked upon through the generations as one of your best strikers?
There are two enduring nicknames at Stoke, and one is the man over there who's called the Messiah. Alan Hudson walks on water, and Mark Stein was known as the Golden One. So that tells you something about how highly he's respected. I mean, personally, I love Mark Stein. Often you get asked these things, name your all-time Stoke 11. It's just an impossible thing to do, because I like players for all sorts of different reasons. You know, I love Ricardo Fuller just because he could pull something out of nothing, and he would drive you mad all game long, and then bing bong bong, he scored 2 sublime goals. You know, all the way through, and I like working play. I like Bracewell and players like that. So it's difficult. But I think
Ricardo was a coloured Matt Letizia. You know, you wouldn't see Matt for half hour, you know, and then he'd come out with a gem, you know, and he'll win. Ricardo, I see him come on one night. Stoke played Blackpool and they were losing at half time, and I think Holloway again was in charge of Blackpool, and he come off the bench and transformed everything. He turned the game around with one touch. You know, everyone went wow. You know, but you don't go wow because you know he's such great quality. Fabulous player.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and he still is, isn't he? He's a hero up there. But I
Yeah.
got a picture over there. That's why I kept turning around. With kind of someone's drawn it, and in that 70s squad, it's got Mark Stein and Neil Franklin.
Neil Franklin. Oh, right.
Neil Franklin is the best centre half they've probably ever had.
Oh, yeah.
In the 50s, 60s. And Mark Stein's in the photo with myself, Stanley Matthews, Gordon Banks, Jimmy Greenough.
Can we have a look? Can we have a look at that?
Yes, you can. I'll get it. I'll bring it over. That's how. You think I'm making it up then, Tony?
No, it'd be just nice to see it. That's all. I mean, looking.
He wants to see who looks younger, you or Neil Franklin.
Me or Dennis Smith.
I just want to see Stanley Matthews Schultz. But looking back at your time as a Stoke fan, I mean, I suppose that 19th. I mean, this is painful for me because I was there at Wembley for that League Cup final.
So was I.
Was you? Okay. Would you look upon that team as the best team of your time as a supporter?
No, I think 74, 75 it's a slightly better team. I mean,
well, there it is.
Yeah, there's the pitch Stoke City Heroes. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were I thought it was a photograph. That's why I was surprised.
Okay.
Yeah, when it was it's kind of someone's painted the best.
Yeah.
They're probably there, but am I moving it right or left?
Go to your left. There you go. You can get them all in now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Wonderful.
It's a great. It's up on the wall, and it's great. You got from Waddington, Banks, John Ritchie, Terry Conroy, myself. Neil Franklin must have been that good to be, for him to be in there, or that great. And Mark Stein is on the right hand side. You can see he was a great player just through how he's done that. So that's
yeah.
That proves how good he was.
Yeah. Neil Franklin, just very briefly on Neil Franklin. Billy Wright said he would have hardly got on any caps for England if Neil Franklin hadn't gone and played in Colombia, which is the story about Neil Franklin that he
went for the money and went for the money that weren't there. Yeah,
went for the money that weren't there, and then when he came back, England wouldn't pick him again.
Yeah. So, nice man. He played in Tony Waddington's testimonial. He was the best player on the field. He was about 80.
Yeah. Well, you must have been.
Brilliant.
You must have been to the Dog and Doublet once or twice. He ran a pub down there.
Yeah. I never went there when he had it, but I went after. Yeah.
Nice man. Al, while you were getting the picture, we were just talking about, as far as Nick is concerned, the best team that he's seen during his time as a Stoke City supporter. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Well, I was saying 74, 75, and not it's because, well, one, it's in my lifetime, it's the closest we've come to winning the league. Remember, Jeff Hurst had come, and Alan was saying, didn't he know come? Jeff Hurst came to Stoke because he thought he could win something. He didn't come to Stoke because it was the end of his career, and he finished higher for Stoke than he ever did for West Ham. In his whole West Ham career, he never finished as high as he did for Stoke 2 years running. Well, we finished 4th and 5th, I think, or 5th and 6th, one of the two, I can't remember. And the greatest day would be, I think it was Easter Monday, Liverpool 2-0. That was a great day. And I think Terry Conroy got both, didn't he? I might be wrong, but that was when, so we're top on Easter Monday, having beaten Liverpool 2-0 at home, and you're thinking it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Well, it was even greater for me because that was the day that Shankly came in and shook my hand and said, what a performance, the best I've ever seen. But you mentioned about the 75 team there. It's like, again, talking about the Chelsea team that won the Champions League and with the great players they had. Again, it was just, we played the kind of football without everybody touching the ball. Our defenders are the March and Pettit will go down the line and they'll come into play, but Pluto and Dennis, then the great Alan Dodd came in.
I loved Alan Dodd. Loved him.
Yeah, it was again the jigsaw puzzle, but the blend. Tony knew the blend.
Well, yeah.
Who to give the ball to?
Yeah. And
give it to your best players.
Those 5 at the back you talk about. If you had Doddy, there's all local lads. So that's important as well.
That says a lot.
A little bit. Yeah. But the interesting thing about not only that year but that era is, from 1959 to 1981, 11 different clubs won the league. That's what you want, isn't it? That's absolutely fantastic. That's it. 11 clubs in 21 years won the league. You're talking Burnley, Ipswich, Derby, Forest, Villa, Manchester United, Manchester City, Everton, Liverpool, Tottenham, and Arsenal. And that's what made it exciting, was that. And QPR had half of a chance one year.
They're unlucky.
Yeah, and so you think that's what I liked about that era was, why not? Why wouldn't it be? That's like having 6 Leicesters, if you like, in a period of 20 years.
That's why a lot of people are getting excited at the moment about the way Bournemouth are playing and the way Nottingham Forest are playing.
Absolutely. But it would never happen again. There'd never be another Leicester. That couldn't happen again. It was a total one-off. It was a bit like when Sevi came along and started playing. No one could do what Sevi done.
Yeah.
They were playing golf. But
the other thing about Leicester actually is interesting, which I hadn't realised, was they were the second biggest spenders in the league that season.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just magic; it was an awful lot of bloody money went in.
Well, when you think that they had Robert Huth, centre half, who went to Stoke. He played for Chelsea. He's a good centre half, whatever. But the difference he made at Leicester was unbelievable.
Yeah. And they had Mahrez and Vardy. No one had heard of either of them. And they were incredible for them. But yeah, we cling to teams like that, and we hope.
Yeah, of course we do.
Well, we've probably taken up far too much of Nick's time. Anything you'd like to say before we close, Alan, to Nick?
No, just say great to have him on. I'm so pleased I got hold of you. We're going to meet up, and I'll come on your podcast if you pay me. Those days.
I'll tell you what. I'll pay you the same you paid me. How about that?
Absolutely. No, it'd be great. It's such a pleasure to have you on, because we have certain people on, but to tell, he drives me mad, Nick, because it's Chelsea, and it's great to mix up. And we got the Chelsea. If we hadn't, what a lot of people don't understand, and supporters don't understand, particularly in my case at Chelsea. If Stoke City hadn't beat Chelsea at Wembley, I would never have become a Stoke player. No. They would have drifted away. He would never got the money. He would never have been able to go to the bank manager and say, I lived in the city. I lived in Barlaston, where there was 250,000 people when you come back with a cup, and I see it for myself when I moved into that village, and they were still talking about it. But if we'd have won our 3rd cup in 3 years at Chelsea, things would have changed for us, and things would have changed for you. And I think that was why the lads at Stoke still celebrate that League Cup victory.
That's absolutely right. I remember very quickly, just to finish off, I remember going, I think I was with David Baddiel, going somewhere in the ground where there was somewhere to get a drink. I don't know where it was, but there was all pictures up around, and one of the pictures was of you, and it said Alan Hudson, Chelsea in England. And I said, well, that's not true. It's Alan Hudson, Stoke City in England, because he never played for England when he was at Chelsea. He played for England when he was at Stoke. So don't you go putting Chelsea in bloody England on that.
Well, before we go, just tell us what that means to you that day, the 1972 League Cup final.
Oh, well, I was 9. I'd never been to London before. I remember coming down the Edgware Road, and that little turn that comes. You're coming up from the bottom of the M1, and there's that turn. There's a garage with a big half-timbered building, which is a block of flats. Well, and I remember saying to my mum, "Is that where Bobby Moore lives?" That's how wet behind the ears I am, because it was the biggest building I'd seen, and Bobby Moore was the captain of England. Therefore, that's where Bobby Moore lived. And it's strange that tricks your mind play on you, because I don't remember a lot about the game, but I really, really remember coming out, getting on the tube, and somebody saying that Leeds had beaten Southampton 7-0. Isn't that the weirdest thing? And then my dad sitting next to me, putting the programme on his knees and writing Stoke 2, Chelsea 1, Conroy in Eastham, Osgood. And I thought, like we're going to forget. Like, I'll jot that down because of all the other cups we're going to win in the future.
Brilliant.
That's great. Well, that's a nice way to top it off. Thanks
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much for.
Cheers, pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Nice to see you both.
And you're on full, mate. That's great.
Brian. Yeah.
I'll be in
All
touch,
right.
Nick.
Cheers, boys. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Keep in
Thanks,
touch,
Tony.
pal.
Thanks. I will do. Thank you. Bye.
All right, mate. Bye.
Bye.